and saw the book, The World of Dressage. In
Okay.
it was a picture of Elena Petostrovka on Propel.
Oh, yeah.
And it was so beautiful. It was, I still see it. It was so beautiful that I thought, what is a Trek in her, you know?
When I ran across Edith Kasterka and all of her Trakehner horses and kind of went, wow, when I saw Morgenglans for the first time, what is he? And the rest started from there.
We were breeding horses and always trying to, breed the perfect event horse. We first tried quarter horses crossed with thoroughbreds, but never came up with anything suitable. And when I saw these Trakehner horses, I went, wow, this could be it.
We did not want our kids under flighty horses for safety reasons. So we got thinking that there had to be something better, a blend of it all. A big enough horse that I could ride it, and yet gentle enough that we could raise kids around.
And I got involved with Trakehners here in this country when my daughter Rhea, she went to the University of Kentucky and took the horse with her and boarded it there with a family named Roberts who had Trakehners.
Oh, okay.
And that's how we got involved in Trakehners.
Okay.
And kind of always liked the breed,
Mm-hmm.
That was the way it was, and I've stayed with it ever since.
I fortunately lived with Roberts,
Mm-hmm.
who helped start the association.
Yep.
That's how I got familiar with Trakehners.
Growing up, my involvement with Trakehners really had to do through my dad, because that was his choice of horse. I was very conscious about the Trakehners because we stood a stallion by the name of Milos. Milos was the first Trakehner stallion in the United States.
When I went into the barn, all I saw was ears. I'll never forget, because I had Arabs,
Oh, yeah.
I saw this barn full of ears. I thought, God, are they mules?
I joined all the warm blood associations that existed at the time. Oldenburgs weren't here yet, but Holsteiners, Hanoverians were, and I joined everything trying to learn. But over the years, I just dropped that membership, and I dropped that one. And I joined the ATA as a life member.
Right from the beginning.
Right from the beginning.
And we just happened to get people like that, just people that took it seriously. They were sincere breeders. And
So we had people that were really bred in their genes horse people.
Gerhardt was one of the most wonderful gentlemen and a really good mentor, because I could really sit and talk to him. He just was a horseman. He was a true horseman.
Gerhard Schickedanz, who struck me as being a person worth knowing right from the get-go.
So they lived right on the border with East Prussia, the old East Prussia, Lithuania, and then, so those were the horses that they had in that area. So they were the East Prussian warm bloods, or the Trakehners, if they were known to be Trakehners. So that's the legacy piece. My mother's family was truly on the Trek. He was in the military, so his family was part of the Trek as well.
One of our travels, we called up this fellow named Gerhard Schickedanz, who we couldn't pronounce his name or anything. Visited him and ultimately bought Abdullah from him.
Yeah.
And Gerhard became a very, very influential person in our lives. He was just a wonderful, wonderful man. He followed everything that we did. He supported us at times, and he was just absolutely, he was an amazing person. When he died, they had a service for him up in Canada. And Charlotte, the family invited, Terry had passed away by then. I'm telling you, I thought it was going to be just, in a church or whatever. There was a tent set up. I'm sure that there were 1,000 people there. He was an amazing man.
I mean, they had a love of horses. It was deep. It was many generations. So at the turn of, not from this, our last century, but the one before, so when you're talking about 1899 to 1900, so at the turn of that century, my father's family were the largest horse dealers in continental Europe.
That was the most impressive thing at the meeting. But meeting for real my idols of Gerhard Schickadance and Max von Blücher, Henry Scheuring, all of those people, that was phenomenal. Franz and Elke Hollenbach, they were so welcoming and so good with newbies. Robert Baird, all of those people were just wonderful and welcoming. ATA from the beginning was warm, friendly people. I mean, the great Abdullah and Terry and Sue are welcoming me to the fold, and Gene Brinkman was always so very friendly.
Leo Winery
Right.
came from that because he bought a mare. Max von Blücher, I think he was through Goethe.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think Henry Scheuring was through Goethe.
I remember the ones that helped me the most, probably the most.
Sure.
And that would be people like Gerhard and Max. Henry was always there helping us. And Dave and Pat Goodman, I've got to mention, as wonderful, inclusive people.
So in 1960, and that's when my father and Uncle Gus, my Uncle Gus, they bought they bought a couple of mares. There was a woman, Gerda Friedrichs. So she was importing horses back then in the 50s already.
So I would say he probably imported, I don't know, between 200 and 300 Tricaners.
Well, I had 125 horses here at my utmost, and not all of them were Tricaners, but most of them were.
Leo was, no question, the leader of the pack. He was a natural to become the president. There was nobody was against that. We should be forever grateful for his organizational abilities. He did most of the legwork making it happen.
We had the luck of having so many good people at those first meetings, and Leo, that was the biggest luck we had, because he could write everything down, and he was a lawyer and a judge, and he loved the breed.
When Leo took over everything, he really established some good contacts, and Son got a lot of contracts signed and stuff, and he was such an asset to everything.
Leo was the most important person we ever had. He just kept us straight,
Yeah.
I think we just turned to him for almost everything to do with organization. It was Jim Rabin that called me, and I don't know, I think, and he sold some horses up to the Gaffords. And he had a lot more contact in Germany as well. So I think he was more into, why don't we form an association? And then I don't know who knew. It was like one person knew one person. So when we got together, there was just 12 of us that just got there.
I want to say Sue's husband, Terry, was a real people person. And I don't know, for some reason, he was really passionate about seeing something get organized.
I'm laying this all on Terry. He was the one that had the vision and spent the time, as from what I can remember. I'm sure that anyone else who owned a stallion, Henry Scheuring, Max, all of these people, Leo didn't have a stallion at that time, but everybody saw the need for a registry. If if they were going to be breeding and, you know, marketing to some degree their horses.
Well, Jackie Roberts was probably the main instigator. Just everybody was kind of just unsatisfied, you know, not having a breed registry. Yeah, and then we kind of sucked Helen in, and everything just kind of fell in place. Everybody wanted the same thing. They wanted a Trakehner. Yeah. And we wanted to be sure it was a Trakehner.
I am going to say that we bought Abdullah in February, and I think my husband got right on it.
What else do I remember about those days? I remember those guys drank a lot of alcohol. We got to mix some of the drinks, and Leo Winery, he loved his Bombay Sapphires, and at the end of the night, I think some of those people didn't know what we were mixing for them anymore, and I don't know if they really cared, so.
Well, the funniest thing to me was I drove Jackie up to Columbus to meet Leo Winery there. And Leo had to go to the courthouse and file some papers. And so Jackie and I drove him down there, and we went upstairs with him. And he goes in this little room with somebody, and then he comes back out, and he takes his pants pocket and holds them out. And he said, I forgot the amount exactly. It seemed like it was either $9 or $3. Yeah. He didn't have any money with him. And he couldn't file those papers.
And that was the papers to incorporate the association.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so Jackie and I were digging through the wallets or purses or whatever, and we gave him the money. And that to me was so funny, is how it started like that.
I set up their registration system.
Okay.
Like, you know, whether to register them as a purebred or Anglo-Trakehner or so forth, you know.
Okay. But it was helpful that you grew up in Germany and could speak German.
Yeah, I could read, and I could read the names of the horses and the papers, you know, and things like that. That's why I took over the registry. I still have a letter in my files that from which was then the president, but named Schilker. I don't know if you heard that name before, but he was the one that wrote the book about Trakehners.
Oh, okay.
And he was the president of the German Trakehner Verband. And then he came over here one year to see what we were doing, you know, and then they sent us a letter that they recognized the HA as an official American representative of the German Trakehner Verband.
Okay.
So that gave us some status.
But still, it gave us a base to start, and we did the same, you know. Brought over the Verband-approved stallions eventually, got some good mares over here, and the rest is kind of trickle-down history.
And they said, well, you know, you really ought to come to this meeting in Ohio. They've got an annual breeding association meeting that's really kind of nice. And so she and I did. I think it was in 1983. But there's a pretty good crowd. Some spectacular horses, like we had never seen horses of this quality in our lives. And the most diverse group of people you can imagine. There were Trek people there. Which the audience knows what that is. But there were also people from California there and from the South, and they were from all walks of life, literally, and they had a common thread. They just loved these horses. Very devoted, and a whole bunch of younger people who are kind of drawn to the magic of this breed and its history and the romance of it. There's a lot to hook people, a great deal.
The best it's ever been is now, as far as I'm concerned. The best it's ever
That's
been.
going to get video.
It's just much smoother. It's more, right now, we just didn't quite get it in there enough for the riders, I didn't think.
You know, I love seeing the growth in what we're doing with our horses and how good they're doing for us. And, you know, the ATA is a family, and we're already doing great horses, and we've got great camaraderie. You know, I mean, trainers just come through for us.
Yeah. So thank you for being a part of
I
it.
think it's just going to just continue to go forward. We've got such a good group, you know, now. Thank y'all for the trainer spirit.
Number one, it was what brought me and my wife together, horses. Number two, I have fallen in love with the romance of the Trainer story. It happened 40 years ago, and it's just as strong now, if not stronger, than it was then. I did become a student of the history of East Prussian horses. I have had the privilege of speaking to people who remembered them from back there, from people who were on the trek, and their children, and their grandchildren, and seen how all this has impacted these people in a positive way. The Trakehner was the best war horse ever developed in the world, period. So this horse has a special reason to continue, a special reason to exist.
I mean, I love Trakehners. And when my dad died 7 years ago, it was my first desire was to get a Trakehner because I wanted to be a member of the ATA.
Because hope springs eternal. That's a message that I want every Trakehner breeder to understand, that they need to recognize it, and so do all of us. Hope does spring eternal. Every year you see those big-bellied mares and you just dream about what's coming out.
Yeah.
It never ends.
Keep our happy family together. Respect everybody, support everybody, and love our Trakehner horses.
You know, when we got in Anna, you know, that was Anna Pottingen and, you know, and Anissa. That was important. They were real important members.
She knew how to connect people.
She did.
But there were others as well who brought attention to the breed because of overwhelming success. Perone was one of them.
And now from the USA, Michelle Gibson riding Perron, a 12-year-old bay Trakehner stallion. And this 1996, they opened the season with 3 Grand Prix victories. Betsy, this is a great team, correct?
Peter, this is a great story. This girl has had this stallion and has worked so hard in Germany and has gotten so much recognition. She has just done an outstanding job. Here you can see in the changes every stride. She's forward. They're big, wonderful changes. She has really, really worked hard for her position, and she's a great hope for the United States. It's a beautiful, elegant stallion. She goes into an extended trot. Very nicely done. The whole picture is very elegant and very good. We're really, really hopeful for this ride.
That happened in Atlanta.
It did, 96.
Yes. It's amazing how that kind of a event, it raises the tide around all breeders and all horse people.
Yeah.
Well, I think somehow all of us in the meeting decided we would go to Germany. Not all, but a few. So Terry and Sue went, and a few others. And Terry and Sue, we were already friends, and Roy went. And so we went to watch, but then when we got there, they had the mare sale.
Yeah.
So I was like, Roy.
Raise your hand.
So we bid on one mare and we didn't get her. And then we bid on the Martini. Maranja, Martini's mother.
Did other people buy horses at that auction?
Terry and Sue bought a mare, chestnut mare, and I bought the chestnut mare. And then when Terry went to pick up his chestnut mare, he picked up mine and took it home. And he took it off the trailer, and Sue said, "Terry, that's Jean's mare." When I started Martini, he was so easy. So easy. Everything was just like boom, boom, boom. That's what I wanted to breed.
Yeah.
That kind of horse, because that I could do something with. That I could make a living off of.
Jean was wonderful about helping people. And of course, you have to look back at her at the USDF. It was infancy. Lowell Boomer had just started it in Lincoln, Nebraska, of all places. And she was learning by reading books, not many clinics in those days, and got Martini to Grand Prix.
Right.
And so that was a big draw because she did something spectacular with that stallion. And in the Southeast, at least, people started to, oh, Trakehner.
When did you know you might have something special there?
The day he was born.
Yeah.
I had a friend sitting with me, and I said, "Oh my God, I've just been delivered a stallion." He was beautiful, and we formed a real big bond, I'll have to say. He wasn't strong. He was very soft and light and easy, and you know, you ask, and I swear, he was reincarnated, Grand Prix horse.
Wow.
Because everything I asked was just there,
Yeah.
It was strange.
Did you put?
And by that time, Sherman Fellows had come into the country. It was 1986. I literally had people in the driveway waiting to breed to him when I drove in from Middleburg. I think I brought him home in April or something, which is pretty late in the breeding season. It seemed like I bred about 30 mares, but then we went to Devon, the first year, and we won 2 classes there at Devon, which was, nobody knew who we were. To me, it was like winning the Kentucky Derby. Even though he didn't have a big show record or anything, he was just right there. He was a good ambassador for the breed.
To read a magazine article about this girl whose grandfather trained stallions at the main stud Trakehner, and she was holding one of her family's favorite Trakehner horses and telling about her life as a graduate student in neurobiology, which our son was doing at the time. So I sent her an email, and that girl is Maren Engelhart, who has since then become one of our best friends. We discussed back and forth and made a plan to go there, and we did. In the late fall of the year 2000, I think it was. We went over there, Cheryl and me, our son, and Darren, and met Maren and her family in Munich, and rented a car and drove all over Europe looking for what we were looking for. And we never did really find it. And on the last day, we were standing in the rain outside the stables outside of Frankfurt at the Hirstein stud. And as we were about to leave, he's talking to Maren in German, and she turns to me and says, "You won't believe what he just told me." He said, "These people are thinking about potentially selling Windfall, but they will only do it to someone who has a 4-star event rider and will keep him intact for breeding." And we went, that could be us. So Darren gets on him and walks him and trots him back and forth, and the guy's going, yeah, he's a rider, all right. And then Darren comes over to me and says, "I gotta jump this horse. I'm not leaving this farm until I jump this horse." So we talk him into a Cavaletti, and then a couple of Cavalettis, and pretty soon, a little more than that, and over he goes. Darren rides over to me and Cheryl and looks at us and goes, "Buy me this horse."
When did you find out that this horse was potentially a team horse, and how did you find out?
On the day I bought him.
As into the box comes Darren Chacha on the very good horse Windfall II, a dressage of 44.6, so he would be hoping not to add anything to that score on this phase.
Yeah, a very important round for the Americans. They've got to get him inside the time to really challenge and make up any ground if they can.
It was us in the role of the Williams at Los Angeles 16 years later.
20 years.
No, 20 years later.
20 years.
You're right.
Yeah.
And it just, I mean, it couldn't have been a more exciting moment in our lives.
The experience and the ultimate medaling had to be just a high at that point.
It was.
Yeah.
I mean, the moment of realizing that this goal of 20 years had been achieved was just breathtaking for us.
Yeah.
I mean, it really was. I don't think there's another Olympic medal winning stallion in the history of eventing who has produced 2 team members himself.
Right. And so he's an Olympian. He's a Grand Prix dressage horse.
Yeah.
He has produced an Olympian, 2 Olympians.
2 Olympians. As a matter of fact, I think we were beating our chests over this a few years ago about him being the only medal-winning event horse who later became competent at Grand Prix.
Yeah.
Did you have a favorite horse that you owned?
That I owned?
Mm-hmm.
And it can be a current horse.
It can be a current horse.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I bought him out, kept him. I've known Rascal since he was this big, you know, and visit him every year. And yeah, I think Rascal probably. I feel the closest to him right now.
And then in 1970, we went as a family. So my parents were 5 children. We went to Germany, so it was my first time. I was 8, and that's when my father bought Ibiza.
I think we went up to Gerhardt's in 72. It was during the winter. And we actually brought Abdullah home in, I'm going to say, February of 73.
What about Abdullah made you think we've got to have this horse?
Oh, he was being wild in his stall up at Gerhardt's. He had gotten out of his stall the night before, and the barn was, I'd be exaggerating to say it was destroyed, but he was very naughty. And there was this 2-year-old stallion loose. Yep. And so Gerhardt actually wasn't home that day. A fellow named Charlie was with Gerhardt for a long time with the horses. And we saw the 2 of us, my husband and I, Abdullah was just being rambunctious in his stall, and the 2 of us just were smitten. And, oh, is he for sale? And Charlie said, I am sure he would sell him. He said, well, we'll buy him.
That's fantastic.
That's how that happened. He had been backed, and he wasn't scary at all. But then again, I was young. Sure. And Terry could ride anything. My husband was a wonderful seat of the pants rider and a wonderful stallion handler. And so that made me pretty fearless. I mean, he had a ton of energy, sure, but there was nothing wild or crazy or scary about him. And he was going to be my Olympic event horse. But unfortunately, I was 30-some years old at the time. And by the time, I mean, he was really quite wonderful. And we did the preliminary championships. And I said, oh, Terry, those jumps are awfully big. At the end of Abdullah's 9-year-old year, we decided that we couldn't just retire him. There was no reason to retire him. So if Abdullah wasn't going to be a dressage horse and eventing was too scary, maybe he could be a jumper. Well, and there you go. And Debbie said, this is a Grand Prix horse.
Terry and Sue and I were you know, we were kind of new together, two trainers, except she had Abdullah.
Right.
At that time, I went to visit her at her farm, and she was doing dressage with him and eventing, and so she said, "Let me show you how he can jump." And he jumped so big that day, and I was like, "He's a jumper."
We called up Conrad, and the rest is history. Conrad is magical. He is absolutely there. He would decide something, and that's what would happen. He was just amazing. He's the most amazing rider. He's just so disciplined.
Growing up in that era, I give all the credit in the world to Terry and Sue. I think if that horse would have left their care and just gone with some, it might be a very different outcome. Their journey to find the right fit for Abdullah was not easy. It was not easy, you know, to find somebody that could get the best out of him.
Things started looking better and better and better. Wow, this is pretty interesting.
You remember when you first found out he was going to the Olympics?
Yeah, they had the USUT had a beautiful, beautiful dinner, a venue in the Adirondacks. I mean, it was as picturesque as it could have been, you know, with tents and lights and an orchestra and the whole.
Oh, wow.
And they announced the team. I can't even begin to tell you how thrilling that was. We didn't know what to do first. Terry was his groom at the Olympics.
Yes.
The first time that Abdullah flew to Europe, we watched the chaos in the loading of the horses, and it was just frightening. And Terry said, "Stand back, I'm going with the horse." And from that point on, he flew with Abdullah. And then we'd always have, you know, somebody there to look like a groom, even though, you know, we messed around the whole time. So by now they knew our method of operation, and they told Terry, "Now Terry, because of the security, we know you're going to fly out there with Abdullah, but they're not going to let you switch and have somebody else take care of him and be his groom. You have to be with him the whole time." He said, "Well, that's absolutely fine. I'll be his groom." He said, "I'm not going to send him out to the Olympics with some teenager." That made the whole experience 10 times more exciting.
Yeah.
So I was at the Olympics too. So Sue and Terry, we were 6 people that shared a room at the Olympics. So they were very kind to take me along. And I got to tell you, your U.S. equestrian team, they knew how to show us a good time.
The morning that they made the decision of who's going to be competing, I can still remember Terry and I we were crazy people. I was able to sneak into the stable area. I got credentials. They were fake, and we won the gold medal. I don't know how I lived through that.
Om vi nu räknar ihop de här 3 så har de 8 fel i den här omgången. Det fick Leslie Burr, och 4 fel hade laget efter första omgången. Det blir sammanlagt 12 fel om inte Melanie Smith rider, vilket inte hon behöver. Och därmed är det helt...
When they narrowed things down, and the best riders were the last ones to go, the ones that had no faults were just obliterating the course. And Abdullah goes in and he has a clear round. And, you know, so as this is happening, I forget who I'm sitting next to. I said, oh my God, that gives us a bronze medal. Oh my God, that gives us a silver medal. So when he didn't win the gold, I didn't care. I honestly didn't care. Conrad never got over it. Never, ever got over it that his partner should win the gold medal, because he was the prima donna of the partnership.
Many people that I've talked to have cited seeing Abdullah in the Olympics as a highlight, and really what kind of galvanized their love for Trakehner horses. I mean, he really was an icon.
With that, I can't tell you how wonderful that makes me feel that he would have such an influence.
It has to be Abdullah at the 84 Olympics. Yeah. Because that set us up. Who are these Trakehners? Really, he started the ATA being a reputable association.
Going to the Olympics.
Yes, yeah, that was too exciting for me. Sue and Terry were not pretentious people at all, you know. And so for them to get there was huge for all of us, just huge for all of us. And the fact that I think they went to Europe one time and competed. They didn't even have enough money to fly home at one point. I mean, they really, they lived for their horses. They really lived for their horses.
Sue and Terry, two of the most generous people on earth, shared that horse with all of us. Mm. It wasn't at all like other horse people in the U.S. We were all part of the Abdullah family. Yeah. And that horse was magnificent. You could put a 2-year-old on his back, 17-hand stallion that could jump the moon.
Certainly Abdullah was the thing then. Right. That was 84, I think it was.
It was.
You know, that's probably what really got us. You would not believe the electricity in that arena in Los Angeles at the end of that ride. It was just breathtaking.
At the time you were watching Abdullah in 84. That's
right.
Did you recognized he was a Trakehner?
We knew exactly who he was. Yeah. We had met Terry and Sue. It was real clear to us what we were looking at. Yeah. And it was thrilling. But the thought of having a moment like the LA Olympics was just over the top for both of us.
Energizing.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so. And that became our dream from that point forward. The thought of being able to produce an Abdullah on our own was the motivation. I don't think Sue Williams ever knew that. It was.
She will now.
So you were in Los Angeles, right? Yeah, LA. LA, 84. Were you in the crowd? What was that?
Crying my eyes out. And I'm crying now thinking about it.
But you've heard Tim Holtkamp say, if Sue Williams can do it, I can do it.
It was a big deal. It was a big deal.
Yeah.
That's what did it.
That kind of launched the.
It was the moment where I thought, gosh, I've met these people that bred this horse or that own the horse, and if they can do it, we can do it. I remember thinking that and saying it to Cheryl, and she said, yeah, I think we could do that.
Yeah.
So that became our goal.
Gerhard came to the World Cup finals in Berlin, and that was a thrill for me. In West Berlin, it was
oh yeah,
2 Berlins at the time.
Right.
And it was so exciting sitting with him during that competition and trying to keep the lid on. It was just it was just a thrill. September 1985, he wrote an article, I don't even know the name of it, My Thrill of a Lifetime, the World Cup finals in Berlin. And he talks about, it's just, to me, it is the most beautiful article ever written about Abdullah. And he talks about how exciting it was that he had sold us this horse and what we had done with him. He he compliments Terry and I and all that we did with Abdullah. I don't know how many of us would have produced the same results with Abdullah as Terry and Sue have. Had we acquired him as a 3-year-old, I suspect rather few. It's not always easy to tell your friends how highly you regard them, and up to this time, I haven't told Sue. Now she knows. Being complimented by the person that you admire the most is the ultimate.